All right. Hopefully you guys can hear me. I'm standing a little bit farther away from my computer. I'm getting ready to start standing here. A couple things that I need. First, I'm going to put my gloves on. I'm going to put this smock on. And when I put on a smock, I like to put it on backwards. Throw it on inside out. So I want to cover the front of my head. I look a little stupid right now, but now safe to start staining. All right. The next thing I got to do is prep my actual stain. All right, so I have these two cans here. They're both pretty old. They're kind of covered in the stain, but I need to get these stains ready to go. Now, what's actually happening inside this can is that a lot of the stain kind of settled on the bottom of the can. The can itself is kind of made up of sediments, little pieces of rock and different kind of colorations that settle towards the bottom. There's also an activator down there. But when I stir it, mix all those things together, it's like a catalyst, right? It starts the process. So when I stir it up, the stain becomes activated. If I pop this top and just dunk my brush in and start painting onto the wood, none of that stain color is going to really penetrate into those grains. First thing I need to do is pop the tops on these things, give them a good stir. Sometimes I like to stir them, just give it a little shake before I pop the top, but I know that these are both used, a little older, so I'm a little scared to shake them too much and get stained. All right, I'm going to go grab a screwdriver real quick to pop these. I've got plastic. All right, sorry about that. So I've got a tool right here. This is actually not a screwdriver. You may have seen some of these laying around. Painters have them everywhere. It's got a nice little flat top on it. I use these to pop my stain. So I'm going to pop the top off of this thing. We'll get started here staining. Okay, I've got the top off. You can see the stain doesn't really have a great color. It looks kind of gray, very wet on the top. I need to activate the stain. So I'm going to find a piece of scrap wood, give it a quick stir, and you'll see some of that color start to shine through. Now, the goal on this stain is to get a nice kind of golden brown. You can see a little preview of what I'm looking for there. Now, you'll also notice that on my birch wood, I probably am not going to get that great color. On the oak, because it's already kind of a brownish color, I might see that true stain shine through. Got a scrap wood here. I'm going to give this a stir, and hopefully we can start to see a little bit more of that color coming through. Very sticky on the bottom here. It's where a lot of that sediment and that catalyst has settled. Feel it's starting to get easier to stir. That color is starting to shine through a little bit more. So you can even see on the stir, it's very liquid up on the top, but I like the color that it's getting up here. Down here on the bottom, a lot of that sediment, a lot of that catalyst is stuck at the bottom of the stick. That's fine. All right. So step number one is done. We've activated our stain. It's stirred up. It's ready to go. The next thing I'm going to do here is grab one of my paint brushes, and I'm just going to paint a little bit of the stain on the birch up here, a little bit down here. Then we'll do the same process with this espresso, the darker stain in the middle, and then we'll hit it with the Danish oil on the end. So we'll have three kind of stripes on these boards where you can compare and contrast what the different stains, different colors look like. All right, so when we're staining something, what I like to do is start with a paintbrush. I've even seen plenty of people, you just take a rag, you dump the rag, and you rub it on. What I like to do is just take a paintbrush, get it nice and wet, nice and full, then paint that stain onto my my part. All right. Now, one thing I want to point out that I'm being pretty generous with this stain, and I'm also, when I'm applying it with the grains. Right. My whole goal is that this stain penetrates those grains. Right? I want this stain to penetrate the wood So it gets a nice deep, and more importantly, a nice consistent color in there. Not skimping out. I'm being very generous with this. I picked this stain for a reason, right? I want this color to shine through. Okay, so now that I have applied my stain, right off the bat, I can see a couple things. Right, my oak, I can already tell it's penetrating it really well. It's a nice consistent color. On this birch over here, I can see right there where the grains are less concentrated. Over here, there's a little bit more grain going on. And I can see it's penetrating here a lot better than over here. Okay, so now that it's brushed on, this is one of the most important steps that a lot of students don't think about or just don't know to do. All right, once the stain is on your workpiece, what you don't want to do is take a rag and wipe it off. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but what we're really doing is we're removing excess stain and we're pushing it down in the grains. I can really even see on this oak, you can already see it starting to penetrate along that line. On the birch, less so. So another example of why oak tends to stain better than birch. Okay, so I'm going to take this t-shirt, this old rag here, and I'm just pushing and wiping away excess stain on this part. Here, birch stuff is no good for stain. Okay, so that stain is now applied. What I'm going to do is take a board like this, one of my nail boards, one of my drying boards, and generally I would stain the entire part, top, sides, bottom, the entire thing, and then set it on that nail board so it dries really evenly. We're not going to do that because I want to put the other stains on here and get that stripe look so that you guys can see exactly what those different stains look like. But that's the process right there. Generally what we'll do, we'll stir, paint, and then wipe. Okay, all three steps are important to get a nice consistent look and feel on our parts. All right, I'm going to actually pop the top in this espresso. Do that second layer there. See what some of the differences might look. Espresso can, very old, so hopefully it's not a bad color. We'll see what we get. All right, so once again, giving it a good stir, trying to get it nice faded. One's a lot thicker, much darker color. But espresso is a very, very popular. Kind of gives the boards a walnutty look. You can get the look of walnut, but the qualities of birch. You can already see much darker. That was dumped directly into the stain, so hopefully ours isn't quite that dark by it. All right, so same principles, right? I'm not going to skimp out. I'm going to get a nice thick coat on there, and I'm doing it with the grains. I want that penetration. So much darker. All right, so clearly there's a major difference there. But even just looking at the three stripes, you can see the original raw oak, that espresso color here, and then the golden white driftwood. Three different kinds of stains here. The same exact process on what we're doing here. So I've activated my espresso. I'm going to let it soak in just a little bit, give it a chance down on those grains. Then we're going to get our rag and we'll remove this top and also push it down into those grains. One thing that you can do that might help speed this process up and also might help you get a more consistent color throughout your stain, that you can actually take water before you apply a stain and soak the board in water, just like if you were applying a stain, right? You can brush it on with a paintbrush. What that does is it starts to penetrate some of those grains and opens them up. So the more open those grains are going to be, the more likely they are to accept. That might give you a more consistent color throughout. Even just looking at this board right now, I can see over here it's soaking up a lot more than over here. That might lead to some blotchiness on the board. So water is also a really good way to like prep your board for something like a stain or an oil or some kind. So I'm wiping this off, and I'm also kind of pushing it down into those grains. Kind of nice espresso color. Now let's do the birch. Not great. Not good. Okay, so here's what my walnut looks like. You can see the raw color. It's a nice classic walnut or oak color. This espresso color looks really nice, right? It draws out all those grains, makes them look really, really pops and gives you a darker color. And then that driftwood is a more oaky look, but it's very, very pure, right? A little bit more golden. Oak looks great. Look at this birch. It looks terrible, terrible, right? Here's our classic birch. Looks great. Raw birch is awesome. Nice light color. Down on the bottom, it does look a little bit gold. I think the lighter color worked a little bit better. But right here with that dark espresso, it looks awful. Look at all these splotchy lines. Not good, right? We usually don't want to apply a finish or a stain with birch with larger tight grains. Right? All right. I know this video is getting long. I do want to wrap it up by putting a nice Danish oil finish. Talk a little bit about the differences between oil and the stain. The main difference between an oil and a stain is that the oil doesn't have those sediments, right? This is going to get it, it's going to penetrate it in a little different manner. The more natural look, it's going to give you a kind of a golden shine versus a real color change. If you were staining something, I would say that you need to also apply some kind of lacquer if you want it to last longer. The stain doesn't really change the texture or the feel of the wood. This oil is going to give it a more shiny, thicker, natural look. So I'm still going to take my oil can and I'm going to give it a shake this time, right, just to give it a little bit of an activation. And for this, I don't actually want to use a paintbrush to paint it on. What I want to do with an oil, a Danish oil, there's plenty of different kinds of oils that you can apply. So I'm just going to take a rag. Old can. Yeah, that top is rusted shut. All right, I'm going to cut the video. I'll create another video when I get the top off of this thing, and we'll jump back in. I'll show you what that oil looks like when it's done. All right, I'll see you guys in the next video.